The shelter hummed with quiet determination. Volunteers bustled through the hallways, arms laden with blankets and food trays. In the playroom, children's laughter mingled with the squeak of toy cars and the rustle of coloring books. But for many, beneath the surface of this seemingly normal day, there lingered an air of exhaustion and uncertainty. Mothers worried about finding jobs, fathers wrestled with the burden of providing, and children, too young to fully understand, found solace in the little joys the shelter could offer. The front doors swung open, letting in a brief gust of cool air and sunlight. Most of the residents barely noticed, too caught up in their routines. But as the figure stepped inside, the hum of activity seemed to falter. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Angelina Jolie stood quietly by the entrance, her understated elegance impossible to miss. She wore a simple black coat and scarf, blending in as much as someone of her stature could, yet there was a warmth in her expression that immediately put people at ease. He exchanged a few words with the director of the shelter, who gestured her toward the common area. As she moved through the space, she paused to greet residents with a genuine smile, her voice soft but confident. For many, it wasn't just the surprise of seeing a global icon in their midst. It was the sense of hope she carried with her, an unspoken promise that their stories mattered. In the far corner of the shelter's dining area sat a woman named Maria, her two young children by her side. Her youngest, a 4-year-old girl named Lily, clutched a crayon, drawing wobbly circles on the back of a paper placemat. Her older son, Max, sat quietly, flipping through a tattered book, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maria watched them, and her face a mixture of weariness and fear and hope. "Maria, this smells like water, and this is all we've put out, week after week after year. But I dare not get them all up." Maria had arrived at the shelter 3 months earlier, escaping an abusive relationship that had left her with little more than the clothes on her back and her children's favorite toys. The transition hadn't been easy. Nights were filled with worry about how she'd rebuild her life, and days were spent juggling odd jobs while trying to be present for her kids. Yet despite everything, Maria remained resolute. She refused to let her circumstances define her or her children's future. As Angelina approached, Maria looked up, startled. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Hi," Angelina said, her voice calm and inviting. She crouched down to Lily's level, her scarf brushing the floor. "What are you drawing?" Lily blinked up at her, holding up the placemat proudly. "A rainbow," she declared. Angelina said with a warm smile, then turned to Maria. "You must be her mom. She's lucky to have such a strong role model." Maria flushed slightly, unused to such direct praise. "Thank you," she murmured. "We're just taking things one day at a time." Angelina nodded, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "Sometimes, one day at a time is the bravest thing you can do," she said gently. In that moment, Maria felt a connection, one she hadn't expected. It wasn't just the presence of a famous figure that struck her. It was the sincerity in Angelina's voice, the way she listened without judgment. For the first time in months, Maria felt truly seen. Angelina settled into a worn chair opposite Maria, her focus entirely on the mother and her 2 children. It was a stark contrast to the bustling, distracted world outside the shelter. Maria glanced nervously at Lily, who was now happily showing her scribbled rainbows to Angelina, and then at Max, who had quietly moved closer, his curiosity piqued by the visitor. "How long have you been here?" Angelina asked gently, her voice warm but laced with genuine concern. Maria hesitated, her fingers instinctively tightening around the edge of the table. 3 months, she said softly. "I had no choice but to leave. For my kids." Her gaze dropped to Lily, who was humming to herself as she colored. There, safety comes first. Angelina nodded, the understanding in her eyes clear. Maria's lips quivered as she tried to maintain her composure. It was, she admitted. But it was harder to stay. Her voice cracked slightly, and she looked away, blinking back tears. We lost our home, my job, everything, and now I don't know how to start again. I've been applying everywhere, but no one wants to hire someone who's been out of work for so long. Angelina leaned forward, her expression softening. You're doing everything you can for them, she said, her tone steady. That takes strength, more than most people realize. Maria managed a small, wavering smile, but her worry was palpable. It doesn't feel like enough. I don't have anyone to watch them while I work. Daycare is too expensive, and the shelter can only help so much. She paused, exhaling shakily. I just want to give them a better life. Angelina's gaze shifted to Max, who was carefully folding the corner of a torn page in his book, and then to Lily, who had begun humming a lullaby. There was a quiet resilience in their small, innocent faces. Children who had adapted to circumstances they didn't deserve. Max, Angelina said, her voice kind, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Max looked up, startled that she was speaking to him. He hesitated before replying, his voice barely above a whisper. An engineer. I like building things. Angelina's smile widened. That's a wonderful dream. And Lily, what about you? Lily grinned, holding up her crayon. I want to paint rainbows forever. Angelina laughed softly, the sound lightening the heaviness of the moment. She turned back to Maria, her expression shifting to one of quiet determination. They have big dreams, she said, and so do you. I can see it. Maria looked down, her voice trembling. I just don't know how to make it happen. For a moment, Angelina said nothing. Her fingers traced the edge of the table, her mind visibly turning. She had seen countless families in similar situations during her humanitarian work. But something about Maria's unwavering love for her children, her quiet strength, moved her deeply. Oh, finally Angelina spoke, her voice firm but filled with compassion. Maria, I'm going to help you. You don't have to do this alone. Maria's head snapped up, her eyes wide. I don't understand, she stammered. Angelina smiled, leaning closer. You'll see soon enough, she said, her tone carrying both reassurance and mystery. The wheels of change had already begun turning, though no one in the room could fully grasp what was about to unfold. Angelina gently placed her hand on Maria's, grounding her in the moment. I've been where you are, she said softly. Not in the exact same way, but I've seen how hard it can be to start over. To keep hope alive when everything feels stacked against you. You're not alone in this. Maria blinked, her eyes shimmering with unspoken emotions. The weight of those words settled over her, filling a space she hadn't realized was empty. I don't know how to thank you, Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. Angelina smiled, shaking her head. You don't have to. But let's start with what you need most right now. Maria hesitated, glancing toward her children. A stable job, she said finally. Something that allows me to be there for Max and Lily, but also keeps a roof over their heads. Her shoulders sagged slightly as she added, and maybe childcare. I can't do both without someone to watch them. Angelina nodded thoughtfully. Childcare and a job. We could make that happen. Nearby, Lily tugged at Angelina's sleeve, holding up her placemat. Look, I drew another rainbow, she exclaimed proudly. Angelina's face lit up as she leaned closer, admiring the colorful scribbles. This is beautiful, Lily. You're so talented. She reached for another sheet of paper from the table and grabbed a crayon. Can I draw with you? Lily's eyes sparkled as she nodded, and soon the two were scribbling side by side. Angelina's quick sketches of animals, playful puppies, and fluffy kittens, earned giggles from both children. Max, though quieter, couldn't help but inch closer to watch. "You're really good at that," Max said shyly, pointing to a cartoonish puppy. Angelina grinned. "Thanks, Max, but I think Lily's rainbows are way better." The warm exchange drew the attention of the other residents and shelter staff. Whispers rippled through the room, some murmuring about the surreal sight of a global icon sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children. A few volunteers exchanged smiles, their admiration for Angelina growing with each passing moment. "Here's me!" One of the staff members approached hesitantly. "But seeing you here, it means a lot to everyone. It's not every day someone of your status takes time to truly listen." Angelina glanced up, her gaze earnest. "This isn't about status," she said firmly. "It's about humanity. Every person here matters, and if I can do something to help, I will." Maria watched the scene unfold, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. For months, she had felt invisible, lost in a system that seemed indifferent to her struggles. But now, someone was not only listening, but truly seeing her. As the evening progressed, Angelina met with the shelter director and other staff members to discuss how to create a sustainable impact. She inquired about their biggest challenges and brainstormed ways to support the families long term. Maria mentioned needing childcare, Angelina said, her voice thoughtful. "What if we expanded the shelter's daycare program? And perhaps we could set up job placement services specifically for single parents." The director's eyes widened. "That would be transformative, but funding for something like that is..." Angelina cut her off with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about the funding. I'll handle it." Gasps and murmurs spread among the staff and residents who had overheard the exchange. Maria's breath caught in her throat as she realized the magnitude of what Angelina was offering. Turning back to Maria, Angelina knelt once more, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Your story has already inspired me, and I have a feeling it's going to inspire many others too." Maria couldn't speak, her voice was choked with emotion. Instead, she nodded, tears streaming down her face as Lily wrapped her tiny arms around Angelina in an innocent gesture of thanks. It wasn't just Maria's burden that felt lighter in that moment. There was a palpable shift in the room, as if hope itself had taken root in the hearts of everyone present. A week later, the shelter buzzed with an energy it hadn't seen in years. Word had spread about Angelina's visit, but the excitement wasn't just about her presence. It was about what she had set in motion. Trucks pulled up to the shelter loaded with supplies, new bedding, books for the children's corner, and even portable play equipment for a daycare center being established on site. Along with the supplies came a team of contractors who had been hired to renovate the building, turning the aging facility into a space that felt safe, warm, and full of possibility. Maria stood at the edge of the commotion, holding Lily's hand as Max tugged excitedly at her sleeve. "Mom, look, they're building something," he said, his face lit up with curiosity. Angelina arrived later that afternoon, dressed in her usual understated fashion, but her presence once again drew every eye. She made her way to Maria, smiling as she crouched down to greet Max and Lily. "How's my favorite artist?" she asked, tapping Lily's nose playfully. Lily giggled, holding up another rainbow she had drawn. "I made this for you." "It's beautiful," Angelina said warmly, carefully folding the picture and slipping it into her bag. She then stood and turned to Maria. "I wanted to show you something," she said, her tone gentle but purposeful. Maria followed Angelina into what had been a storage room, but now looked entirely different. The walls were freshly painted with cheerful colors, and rows of small tables and chairs filled the space. "This will be the daycare," Angelina explained, "so parents like you can have a safe place for your kids while you work or go to interviews." Maria's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears brimming. But Angelina wasn't finished. I've also partnered with local businesses to set up a job placement program for the shelter's residents. And we're funding a scholarship program for training and education. She paused, her gaze steady on Maria. This isn't just for you. It's for every family that walks through these doors. Maria shook her head, overwhelmed. Why? She managed to say. Why would you do all this for us? Angelina's expression softened. Because I believe in you, she said simply. And because the world needs to see that families like yours deserve more than just survival. You deserve a future. Max tugged on Angelina's hand, his voice small but filled with awe. Does that mean my mom can get a job now? Angelina crouched to his level, placing a hand on his shoulder. It means your mom can do anything she sets her mind to. For Maria, it was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that better days were possible. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling. You've given us more than hope. You've given us a chance. Angelina smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. You'll take it from here, she said gently, and I can't wait to see what you do. Again around him, other residents watched with a mix of gratitude and inspiration. In Maria's story, they saw their own potential. What Angelina had started wasn't just about one family. It was the beginning of a movement that would ripple far beyond the shelter's walls. It began with a single photo. A volunteer at the shelter had snapped a picture of Angelina sitting on the floor with Lily and Max, crayons scattered around them, while Maria watched with a faint smile. The image radiated warmth and humanity, and when it was posted to the shelter's social media page with a caption about her contributions, it quickly caught the attention of local news outlets. Within hours, the post went viral, with headlines spreading across the internet. Angelina Jolie funds daycare and job programs for struggling families. Actress sparks hope in shelter residents with unprecedented gesture. Angelina Jolie proves small acts of kindness can lead to big changes. National media picked up the story, highlighting the depth of her involvement, not just a donation, but a commitment to systemic change. Interviews with shelter staff revealed how Angelina had asked thoughtful questions, connected with families on a personal level, and taken real steps to improve their lives. Inspired by her actions, public figures and organizations began stepping forward. A tech CEO announced a $1 million donation to shelters across the country, while a famous musician pledged to fund similar daycare programs in underserved communities. Social media became a hub for stories of everyday acts of kindness. A local restaurant owner offering free meals to families in need. A teacher crowdfunding for supplies to start a tutoring program at another shelter. A small business hiring single parents with flexible hours to help them re-enter the workforce. Maria's story became a symbol of resilience and hope. Interviewed by a major news network, she spoke candidly about her struggles and how Angelina's support had changed everything. She didn't just help us, Maria said, her voice steady. She showed me that people care, that there's still good in the world. At the shelter itself, the changes were profound. Donations poured in, from financial contributions to toys, clothes, and educational supplies. Volunteers signed up in droves, eager to be part of something meaningful. The new daycare center, now fully operational, was bustling with activity, giving parents a chance to focus on rebuilding their lives. The local government even took notice, working with community leaders to propose policies that would make resources like childcare and job placement more accessible to struggling families. Angelina's actions didn't just improve conditions at one shelter, they ignited a movement. Across the globe, shelters reported an uptick in support, and her message of empathy and action resonated far beyond the walls of that modest building. It was a reminder that one act of kindness, no matter how small, could inspire countless others. The ripples of Angelina's visit reached places she might never see, changing lives in ways even she hadn't imagined. Sometimes, one shelter volunteer reflected in an interview, all it takes is for one person to care deeply enough to spark something extraordinary. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Maria sat on a bench outside the newly renovated shelter, watching her children play on the freshly installed playground. Their laughter filled the air, the sound she hadn't heard in what felt like forever. For the first time in months, she felt a lightness in her chest, a sense of security and hope she thought she'd lost. Inside, the shelter buzzed with activity. The daycare was already becoming a lifeline for families, and the job placement program was connecting residents with opportunities they never imagined possible. Staff members spoke with gratitude and amazement about the transformation they had witnessed, crediting Angelina's vision and dedication. She didn't just donate money, the director of the shelter said in an interview. She listened, she cared, and she acted. That's what made the difference. For Maria, the change was deeply personal. She now had a job interview scheduled for the following week, knowing her children would be safe and cared for in the daycare. But beyond the tangible changes, what mattered most was the belief that someone had seen her struggle and chosen to help. He gave us more than a chance, Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. She gave us hope, and that's something I'll carry with me forever. When Mom was burning the books, Angelina's actions had sparked more than just improvements at the shelter. They had ignited a global conversation about the power of compassion. Across the world, people were sharing stories of kindness, taking steps to support shelters in their communities, and advocating for systemic changes to better support families in need. In a world often driven by indifference, small acts of compassion can ignite global movements. Angelina's visit was proof that even the smallest gesture, when done with sincerity, could create ripples of change that extended far beyond the moment. Who can you inspire today? Support your local shelters and be the change someone needs.